Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Southwest Virginia fishing report with Matt Reilly and Matt Reilly Fly Fishing. How's it going, Matt?
I'm doing great, Marvin. How are you?
Just trying to stay out of trouble. You've been getting a lot of rain in your neck of the woods?
We have, yeah. When we were at the Fly Fishing Festival in Boswell this weekend, the Upper New in North Carolina got about an inch of rain, and so we've been watching that sort of course through the system, and it's on the drop now. And the trout streams here locally got hit pretty good, but nothing it can't recover from in a couple of days. So we're sitting on the sidelines right now, but we'll be fishing by the weekend for sure.
Yeah, that's great. And so, folks, we're recording this on January 14th, so just in time for the weekend, time to get out, and it's probably still going to be unseasonably warm. So I imagine kind of what we've been saying in the last few reports is going to kind of hold, that the fish are going to be a lot more active than they normally would this time of year.
Yeah, that's what it's looking like. In fact, we're going to be out trout fishing tomorrow, and things should be pretty good, so stay tuned for some good pictures, because, we've got this higher water, pumping through the system, and warmer temps, things should be pretty active. So I'm excited about that. And then the Lower New, it takes a lot for it to get, real dirty. And when it does, it recovers pretty quickly. It'll be fishable in the next, couple of days. It's fishable now, but it's, still a little high. The Upper New is again, it's a little high, but it'll be pretty dingy, for several days, barring any more rain that we get.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that stain actually helps a little bit on the musky fishing, because I know it's been low and clear recently.
It can, yeah. Lower than last year has been the story, all season so far. So, fish, depending on flow and ambient light and water temp and everything, the fish move around in their winter pools. So, we've been finding them in slightly different places than we were more consistently last year. But definitely a little bit of stain, I think, just gives them a little more confidence in eating, because when it's real clear, it can be fairly tough to get them to eat by the boat. So you're kind of trying to feed them a little further from the boat, where they're not, looking at everything that's going on.
No, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. And we've got a question, this report from Eric. And Eric, by the way, it was nice to meet you in Boswell at the Fly Fishing Festival this past weekend. It's always nice to meet one of our hardcore fans. And he has a question about line selection for a 6-weight rod for smallmouth, and what kind of lines you like and why you like them or don't like them.
Yeah, so I use a couple different lines, for different applications, just because I get a range of different skill levels when it comes to casting in the boat in the summertime. And so I always try to maximize, the efficiency of all the tools that we're using. So, first, the majority of my summertime fishing is topwater fishing. And I prefer sort of a more gradual taper in a fly line versus a real heavy, like you see these like bass lines that have real aggressive heads on them for throwing bigger flies, and I kind of stay away from those with topwater lines, because generally we're making longer casts, as long as you can go, but generally 30 to 60 feet or so, especially when it gets really low and clear, and just splatting bugs, near cover and in shade and that kind of thing. And we're not retrieving them back to the boat. So when you pick the bug up to make another cast, you're picking most of that line up. You're going to do a couple of strips to come tight to the bug and then pick it up and stick it in a new location. So having a more gradual taper, instead of having all of your head way up close to the tip of the fly line, allows you to cast a longer line a lot easier, because you've got taper down there closer to the rod tip. And it also, without all that mass on the water by the head, if you're casting across multiple current speeds and that kind of thing, you do get a little less drag. And sometimes, really dead drifting a bug can be the difference between hooking a big fish and having them come up and not eat it. And then on the streamer front, I fish floating lines the majority of the time. And so even when we're fishing streamers in the spring and throughout the summer and fall, it's mostly floating lines. And I do go to a little more aggressive head on those just because it's a lot easier to, pick up 5 or 10 feet of fly line after you've retrieved your fly back to the boat and do, 1 or maybe 2 false casts and put it back, 40, 50 feet out there where you want it to be. And that's just, an efficiency thing because you don't have to make as many false casts because that heavy head, or that bulky head, I guess I should say, casts shoots better. And it helps to turn over some fairly wind-resistant, bigger bugs. And specifically, the ones I tend to use for topwater stuff would be the Scientific Angler's MPX line. And then for streamer stuff, it's usually the Scientific Angler's Titan Long taper. And the other thing I will mention, not to get too techy, but so, my family owns Reilly Rod Crafters, and a lot of the rods that we use day-to-day fishing are those rods. And our rods are very, you need a line that is a true 6-weight line to fit on a 6-weight Reilly Rod Crafters rod. These days, the trend in the rod industry is to make rods that are lighter and faster, and generally that means there's less flex in the tip. So line companies had to compensate by building lines that are heavier than they should be, so to say. So a 6-weight line is really a 7.5 or 8-weight line a lot of times. So definitely, it helps to be able to cast a couple different lines on a rod to see which one casts the best for you, and for that specific rod. But it's helpful, and it's something that I have to do because of the rods that I fish, is pay attention to that grain weight to see what what you're actually getting, because a lot of those Scientific Angler lines are overweighted a few weights, and so I end up putting if I were to put a line on my 6-weight, it would end up being a 5-weight, probably 7-weight. It would probably end up being a 5 or a 6-weight. So that's something to pay attention to too.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Do you fish any kind of intermediate sinking lines sometime, or sink tips?
I do, yeah. I try to stay away from sink tips, though. Sometimes under heavier flows in the springtime, it can be helpful. But primarily, I'm fishing floating lines and then intermediate lines. And the intermediate line that I like is that SA clear tip intermediate. It's got sort of like a clear head and then a opaque blue running line that's just a lot easier to handle and see.
Got it. Well, folks, keep the questions coming. Remember, send them to us on the Articulate Fly Facebook page. And if we read your question on the air, I'll send you some Articulate Fly swag, and you're going to get entered into a drawing, which is going to happen very soon for, I guess, some Matt Reilly flies, as well as some coupons for some Reilly rods. What's on the typewriter these days, Matt?
Yeah. So this week, the Rural Virginian article should come out today or tomorrow. Sometimes they jump the gun and kick it out on Tuesday. But this week, it's a story about I got to take my girlfriend Allie's little brother on his first actual gun-toting hunt over the New Year's holiday. So we went squirrel hunting up towards where he lives in Northern Virginia. And, it's always, I'm a guide by trade and profession, so I love introducing people to the outdoors, but taking somebody hunting for the first time is something that I don't get to do all that often, and it's something that kind of makes you appreciate where you're at and take a different perspective. So
awesome. Well, I'll drop a link to that article in the show notes, and before I let you hop, why don't you let folks know where they can find you and book you and fish with you?
Yeah, the website is mattreillyflyfishing.com, and you can find my email and phone number and social media links and all that on there. So however is most conducive for you to reach out, I look forward to hearing from you.
Well, that's great. Well, listen, tight lines, Matt.
Tight lines, Marvin.